Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today I want to take some time to further discuss the situation in Baltimore. Last night was a peaceful night. There were some minor skirmishes like shortly after the curfew ended here. But other than that, for the most part, last night was a peaceful night. There were far fewer arrests. There was no property damage. And it was peaceful. And hopefully tonight will remain peaceful. So far, there haven't been any major problems here tonight. And, I'm truly grateful. We're blessed that we have a night of peace. And I hope that peace prevails here in Baltimore. But peace can only prevail if the people have justice. But I just want to discuss a few matters that deal with this situation in Baltimore. I was online today and I read a couple of articles. And I also saw a couple of thought-provoking photos and videos. And I just want to spend a few minutes with you all to just share my thoughts about those things. But before I do, I want to let you all know that I plan on going to the sites of the protests and talking to people, interviewing people on camera. I want to show you some of the property damage that occurred here. And hopefully I'll be able to do that this weekend. So I hope to, have that video posted soon. But I just wanted to talk to you about a couple of things. I saw an image today, and I actually talked to one of my colleagues about this image. And I wasn't aware of this image until I had this conversation with one of my colleagues. And shortly after talking to him, I actually went on Facebook and I saw the image for myself. It's an image of police officers lined up. And these police officers are being protected by African American men in the community. The men have their backs to the police and they're facing outward towards the protesters. Essentially what you have is a situation where these black men are protecting the police, of all people. And upon reflection, I just think that that reflects the slave mentality. And I know some people will disagree with this, but I just have to share these thoughts. Here you have these police. They are armed. They have guns. They have batons. They have tear gas. They have shields. They have helmets. They have armored vehicles. And they have the support of the National Guard. These police harass black people. And I just want to go further into this discussion. Many people often bring up this red herring about how they're good police officers and how we shouldn't label all police officers as bad people. This is not about individual police officers. Of course, there are individuals who are nice people or loving people, good individual people. But we're not talking about individuals. We're talking about an institution. And that's the institution of these police departments. Many of these police departments are structurally racist. They suffer from systemic racism, both in the hiring and in their policing practices. They practice police brutality and police misconduct. They practice racial profiling. They single out our people for harassment and abuse. Every other day you're hearing about another black man being killed. Instead of defending police, we need to defend our communities, defend our young people from the police. Instead of standing in front of those police officers protecting the police, those black men should have been real men, and they should have stood in front of the protesters to protect the protesters from the police. They should have been the leaders of the movement here in Baltimore and guided our young people to more constructive means or methods of resistance. Black men should not be defending the system of oppression. They should be fighting the system of oppression. They should be fighting against police brutality. They should be fighting against racial profiling and police harassment, not defending these police. So that's the first thing that I wanted to mention. The second thing is this. I've been watching a lot of these Negro politicians mimic the language of their oppressor, from the president on down. And they have been calling these young rebels thugs. That's the term that they use to describe these young people. And the term thug is just a euphemism for the term nigger. And I was listening to an interview that Councilman Stokes did on CNN. He stood up against a reporter who insisted that the protesters were thugs. He basically told this reporter that you might as well call them niggers, because that's essentially what the term thug is used as. It's another racially coded term to refer to black people in a derogatory way. These young people are frustrated. They are angry with the conditions that plague our communities. They didn't call those white people that had riots over ridiculous things like sporting events, they didn't call them thugs. They didn't call them criminals when they burned down cities and burned up cars and carried on like crazy people over sporting events. They didn't call them thugs. You didn't have these Negro politicians out here degrading those white people. But see, many of these so-called responsible and respectable so-called Negro leaders, they are so preoccupied with pleasing their white supporters, their white sponsors, their white daddies, their white masters. We don't need that kind of leadership. We need leadership that has courage. Courage to speak truth to power. And Councilman Stokes is such an example of that kind of leadership that speaks truth to power, that calls out the nonsense. We need more like him. And I also saw another councilman in the streets with the people, defending the people. Instead of calling these young people thugs, we need to condemn the real thugs that kill black people with impunity, and that's these police departments. So that's the second topic that I mentioned. So I want to move on to the last point of this video, and that deals with this African-American woman who was captured on videotape disciplining her son, who she saw participating in what has been labeled as riots. He had a mask on, so the public really couldn't see his face. So what she did is she started hitting him and, pushing him away from the scene. And this woman has been celebrated as a hero. Society has basically labeled her as the mother of the year for stopping her young black son from participating in the protests. When I saw that video, there are a couple of things that came to mind. And one of the things that I thought about was, where is this son's father? I mean, her son was taller than her, obviously stronger than her. Where was the father? That was my first thought. And then I had another thought, but I really couldn't put words to that thought until I came across some statuses that I read on Facebook. Some of my friends, my colleagues on Facebook made some powerful points about this issue. And they talked about how essentially what you have here is a situation where a mother is training her son to be weak, to not stand up to white supremacy, white racism, white oppression. And this has been passed down for generations. Black people have been taught to be good slaves. They've been seasoned to be submissive and to adapt to their situation. And that seasoning takes place in the home. Often parents season their children and teach them to be submissive to the system. And that's what we have here. I mean, I understand that a woman wants to make sure that her son is safe and doesn't get arrested. I really do understand that. I understand that. But I think that there could have been a better way for that to have happened. Spanking a kid, publicly beating a kid, that doesn't build self-esteem. That doesn't teach a kid any lessons. We need to move away from this slave mentality where we beat our young people the way the slave master beat us. We need to move away from that and start dealing with our children as intelligent beings. We don't have to brutalize our children in order to discipline them. And I'm sure that that kid has been, spanked before or whipped or beat before by his parents or his mother. But obviously that didn't discourage him from taking to the streets. So corporal punishment, laying hands on a child is not necessarily the best way to discipline them. And the last thing we need to do is teach our children to be good slaves. I could see if she had a discussion with the son, told him that there were more constructive ways to resist this racism, this brutality, these conditions of oppression. But to basically humiliate him in public, that's a different story. And really, my main problem is not with the mother. I mean, a mother's going to do what a mother's going to do to discipline her children. My problem is with how society has responded to this situation, how they have basically hailed this woman as a hero, as a model mother. And there's an excellent piece that I read today in the Washington Post that really elaborates and goes into much more detail about this issue. And really that article helped inspire some of the thoughts that I'm expressing with you today. So I encourage you to read that article, and I will include it in a link in the description box of this video. So check out that article, and please rate, comment, and subscribe. I welcome your feedback, your thoughts, whether they are in agreement or in disagreement. So again, I just want to remind you all that I will be going to the scenes of the protests and capturing footage, and I look forward to hearing from you. Peace.